Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us for this podcast. So, we're coming into the Thanksgiving season right now. It is one of the most unusual ones that we have been through with this last year that has been really described as the year of loss. And now, with Thanksgiving and the time of gratitude, we feel a little bit of the collision of those two feelings together. For some of us, the loss has just been on some of the opportunities or things that we had wished we were going to be able to do this year. For some, it's a little bit more significant, loss of opportunities in school, work-wise. And then for some of us, the loss has really been deep. We've lost those that we've loved. And in this time, it is going to be very easy just to kind of move into a gloom or a bit of a depression, some hopelessness. And that's the last thing that we want to be able to do at this Thanksgiving season. And so I'm joined today by the Cumlin sisters. Each has been through more than their fair share of loss, and yet at the same time, it will be able to share a little bit with us today on how hope and healing can come as the result of that. So I want to welcome. Thank you very much for being with us and joining us today. This is the first time that we've had sisters on here together, so I'm looking for a very energetic conversation that's going to be going on. So if I could just start out by asking you, as sisters go, what was it for you that you found to be the best or worst in your particular birth order? And so we'll start with you, April, move over to Ashley, and then Dawn. I've already revealed the order, but tell us the best and worst about your birth order experience.
Best, I think just calling dibs on anything because you're the oldest. So you just automatically have that birthright. Worst, I was the trial child. So any and everything went, and they learned from the mistakes that they made with me.
Yep.
For me, middle sister, but third born. We have a brother.
Mhm.
And so I think by the time I came around, my parents were too tired to really care too much. And I was generally speaking left alone, which was really good. Fits well with my personality. I got to explore quite a bit and was given a lot of grace and room, a wide girth to just kind of be my own person. So I don't really see a downside to that. Yeah.
I was the baby of the family, and so the best was pretty much got whatever I wanted, and I don't see a worst in that at all. To be honest.
I think you're all affirming each other in the things that you've said that way. Well, we do want to thank you for taking the time to be able to be with us and opening up your hearts as well. I know that in your family experience, you've had more than a significant amount of loss that you've experienced together. And I'm wondering if, April, you can just share a little bit on how with your mom and dad, how that took place with you guys.
Sure. So my mom was just this 5'0", full of joy woman. Anyone who met her loved her instantly. She had this crazy, awesome love for Jesus. She would wear shirts that said things like, "Jesus is my final answer," and she was just awesome. Any opportunity to speak about God, she took it, and there was not a person that didn't love her.
Yep.
My dad, very quiet, but he would give you the shirt off his back, and he was the most caring, awesome person ever. He was hilarious, and he had just this contagious laugh, and he would totally let us pick on him, and he would just roll with it, and we on any opportunity completely just picked on him, and he just rolled with it, and he was like, all right, things are good.
Now, your mom, Jill, she suffered from ALS for about how long?
Multiple sclerosis.
I'm sorry, multiple sclerosis. Thank you very much for that. For MS, yep. How long was that a part of her life with you guys in the family?
So she was diagnosed with it when I was 18 months old. So really our whole entire life, it was part of our lives.
And when your mom then passed and went to heaven, that impact on you, how was that personally for you, losing your mom?
I mean, it wasn't great, obviously, because it was a loss. But I think for me, any having a parent that has a disease that is progressive, you're losing pieces of them the whole entire time through that disease. So to have her go to heaven, I was thankful and I was sad at the same time. So I was thankful that she wasn't suffering anymore, and I knew that being with God and being in heaven was exactly where she wanted to be. So I was happy that she was there. I was sad that she was not part of earth and part of our everyday lives anymore.
Yeah. How about you, Ashley? Don, what'd you add to that?
I'll definitely say it was harder for me. I was actually in Nicaragua when my mom passed, and so I found out like 12 hours later than the rest of the family. So that was really difficult, getting on a plane, knowing that you weren't coming back to your family the way it was. And just before that, I had always been helping my dad and my mom, like, with taking care of her. I work in the medical field. So having that feeling of, like, should I have been there? Could I have done something differently to help the situation? Really ate at me in the very beginning.
It was unexpected. It wasn't like her disease was so progressive that we knew she was dying. She did pass in her sleep, which was just a gracious way for God to bring her home. But it was unexpected, so it was really difficult to wake up and realize Mom was gone. But for me, I work with multiple sclerosis fundraising, and so I do get to talk about her nearly every day. So this was 3 years ago that she passed, but I still get to talk about her, talk about her spirit and her grace and the way that she is, just by being her, she's inspired people and inspired a whole movement that's raised millions of dollars for the cause. So I do feel fortunate that I get to do that still.
And as we're talking about the great difficulties of loss, then it was about 6 weeks later that you could say that when things can't get worse, then they actually did. April, can you tell us a little bit about that?
So it was 4 weeks, and it was my mother's birthday that my father passed, and there was nothing wrong with him. He had arthritis in his knees, was honestly the extent of where he was health-wise. And I remember the doctors, we had all these different specialists trying to figure out what was wrong with him, and they kept on saying, what is his baseline? And 2 days prior, we were at Ashley's gender reveal party, and we showed a picture, and the neurologist is like, this doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because he's dying of a broken heart, and you can't diagnose that, you can't fix that.
Yeah, yep. And I've heard all of you say on many occasions the deep love that your mom had for you that came through, and then your dad, it just continued on afterwards. And so with this about 4-week period of losing your mom and your dad, if you could, just capture your own feelings in a word, what word would that be for you?
I think I thought a lot about that question. I think consuming is probably the right word. For me, being the oldest, I was the head of the estate. And so getting, not only grieving through both parents being gone, but now also figuring out what documents I need, meeting with lawyers. We had property that, all of the ins and the outs. So for me, in that aspect, it became a second full-time job for me.
Yeah. How about you, Ashley?
For me, it was really like this vacancy in the way that it didn't feel real at first, where almost like I half expected throughout the first year of them being gone that we would see them. It just felt like I hadn't seen them for a really long time, and I had been traveling quite a bit through my 20s, and so I was used to going extended periods of time without seeing my family. But now, as it gets further and further and further away from the year that they died in 2017, now it's like it almost gets harder through the holidays, because it's the little things that I remember. Mm-hmm. Like my dad would make the mashed potatoes in this ugly popcorn bowl, and we would make fun of him. So, and so now it's the missing of that year after year, where it's like, okay, it really sets in, and is something that has to be worked through every year.
For me, I would say it was crippling. I was really close with my dad. He was my best friend. And before I was in Nicaragua, I lived next door to them. So I saw them every day. And so I have anxiety and depression, and that just brought that to a whole new level. It was honestly so painful that like panic attacks would bring me to my knees, and Ashley would have to literally talk me through breathing with that. And I had to go live with her right after it happened, because would have been living at my parents' house, and so it was just crippling.
Now, there's really two groups of people that are listening, but asking the exact same question right now. And we really, again, appreciate your willingness to just kind of open up your hearts to us. But for those that haven't experienced what you've gone through, they're asking, how did you get through this? And for those that have recently now entered into that experience, the same question is, how did you get through it? What was it that helped you during the time of deep grief and loss in your lives?
I don't think that you ever get through it. I think that life looks different. I think that, if you're dealing with loss and you're trying to be there for your friends, remember that there's nothing that you need to fix in them. Just being there is really the most helpful thing. And we don't want to talk about it all the time, to be honest with you. Yes, it's a massive event that has happened, but it's a lot easier if we just talk about everyday things as opposed to just focusing on the tragedy.
Yep. And I know we all we get through things differently. So how about you girls? How was that for you?
Well, I'll be honest. Like I said, it was really hard for me after they both passed away, especially my dad. I realized that I needed help when I actually had suicidal thoughts. It was so painful, I couldn't even feel God anymore. That was really scary for me. So I reached out to a Christian counselor because I knew that I couldn't handle this on my own. And it took me literally like being brought to my knees to be able to look up to God and be like, I need help because I'm drowning here. So it took counseling for me to be able to just be reminded of God's promises and that I'm not alone and he's here with me, and he never left that. But when you're going through it, you don't feel anything other than the pain.
Yeah,
So
that's so important and helpful. And thank you for sharing, that perspective too, because some people would go like, no, I can just get through it on my own. And you're saying, no, I wasn't going to get through it on my own.
yeah, and it scared me to even, like, I'm a very happy person. So to think like that, it honestly scared me. And it was that I didn't want to, do that to my family or my nieces. I didn't want to take that route. And so I was like, I need somebody to help me through this. And so that was God's way of bringing me back.
Yeah. How about you, Ashley?
I think it's helpful to know, like at least a little bit understanding of yourself, and being authentic to that. So taking Dong's example, she is someone who's always really in tune to other people and very aware of herself and others and feeling emotions and very connected. And, it doesn't take much for you to really get into things and cry. And then there's people that are a little bit more guarded, and there's no right or wrong. So I think when you're dealing with grief, you kind of have to be authentic with yourself. For me, I tend to find strength within. And so I probably talked less and kind of went more internal. And that was a place that was comforting to me. So I think even through all three of us, like our grief paths looked different, and they probably still look different. And I think it's this understanding of self. For me, it was I didn't owe anyone anything. It was just this trying to navigate what life looked like without our parents, and trying to find that step forward that made sense, that felt like the right thing. But also, I think it's important too to note that, like, the loss of someone that you love does not, it changes your life and changes your outlooks on things, but it doesn't change who you are as a person. So you've always been one way, and someone dies, it might change parts of you, but you don't become a whole different person. And so when you were talking about the different thoughts you were having and the scary thoughts that you were having, that should be a signal to anyone where you're like, this isn't me. This isn't my normal self. I'm not this type of person. I think that's a really good signal to, okay, now I need to find some help to work through this.
Can I ask, did this season of grief and difficulty you're going through, I think you've alluded to it, Dawn, but did it affect your faith? Was there a time of doubt, or how did you go through that?
I remember, honestly, I remember being in my vehicle and just praying out loud, like, Lord, don't let this get me to the point where I'm angry and hateful towards you, because I can't handle that. I had worked so hard to get my relationship with God where it was, and I wanted to keep it there because I was afraid of sliding backwards. And I don't know what my grief would have looked like if God had not been part of it. And we've talked about that, about how just going through it and knowing that God is there was so helpful, and just how painful it is. And for all the people that don't have God in their life, where do you turn when something like this happens?
Yep.
You have no other choice but to turn to God and pray actively, like, Lord, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't want to be angry. What do I do?
Yep. Ashley?
I'll say for myself, I was angry. I was very angry. It didn't necessarily mean that I wasn't talking to God, but I was maybe using some more F-bombs in my conversations. But it's lamenting. That's a part of grief too. And I think, again, it's that, like, being authentic, where you have to say, okay, I don't want to be angry, where I was like, nope, I'm mad. I'm gonna, but for me, it was, I wasn't so mad that I became apathetic with God. I didn't completely remove myself. I was present with God, being mad, saying, this is what I'm mad about. This is unfair. Why? All of the whys in all of the world come out. And I think it's that continuum of the relationship, not being necessarily concerned about how you should or shouldn't be when you're with God. The fact that you're with God is the important part, and all of the other stuff, whether you say it out loud in prayer or anger or whatever it might be, God already knows it. So you're not bringing anything to the plate that he hasn't already seen.
All the pretension went away at that point, and it just kind of broke down to what was very real in your lives. Yeah. Thank you again for a willingness just to kind of help us with that, because I think it's so easy to feel, guilty, or we're going to be like God's going to be mad at us if we don't, act the exact right way, when in fact the way that we act toward him and those moments show that we really can trust, and where our source of strength is going to come from. Well, you guys have shared, you've been able to, interact with each other some, and it seems like that's been a very helpful thing. So as we think about the journey, moving along and going toward a better place, what would you say to a person that doesn't have a sibling going with them? I mean, if they're walking with somebody that would be in a case like yours, not only losing one parent, but another parent tragically, just like that, how could they help their friend that they're walking alongside?
I would say just to continuously check in on your people. When it happens, everyone's so quick to be there for you and do meal trains, and that's great, and like sending flowers and things like that. but it's when the dust settles 6 months down the road, a year down the road, anniversaries, things that you're forever going to miss, like having your dad walk you down the aisle when you get married or having your first kid, and knowing that they're not going to be there for that. It's checking in on your people then and letting them know that we still see you, we still remember them, and know that this certain day is hard for them. I still have my friends that check in on me on those days, and it just makes their memory like that much more meaningful, because it reminds me that my friends remember them too. And when you're going through it, like, you want to isolate yourself, or at least I did. I didn't want to talk to people, and so the people that continuously checked in on me, whether I liked it or not, like, are what helped me through.
I always think that having something to do with a friend that's going through this grief, something that isn't necessarily conversation based. So inviting something like, hey, I'm going to watch this movie, want to come over for pop, just something where it's like, okay, I can be with you in your presence and not have to like sit across with a cup of coffee talking about my feelings, because having that that space for conversation can be uncomfortable if we don't want to talk about it. So I think having things to do, like going hiking or an activity that brings the person that's going through this out, but not necessarily in a situation where they feel like they have to talk about how they're feeling.
Yeah.
Something to get their mind off of what they're feeling.
Yep.
Yeah, something normal, just not so hyper focused on the fact that, hey, you just lost, two amazing people in your life. Like, let's have a conversation about it. It's like, can we do something regular? And, and also I think we all have had, not to say you shouldn't say these certain things, but, take a loss with some grace, and don't say things like, you have a really dark energy about you. Because honestly, if my energy is butterflies and rainbows and I just lost my parents, we have a bigger problem to look after. So just be conscious of what you're saying, and just be present in their lives, and just be a friend. Be a normal, regular friend.
I mean, that's so good. And on that note, are there any others? Please don't do this advice that you can just, give people.
I would say when you see that person for the first time, and I mean, we look wounded, you look wounded, like you can see it on the person's face. Don't say like, what's wrong? Or like, you look so sad. Like, we know we're sad. We feel it. We don't need to be reminded of it.
Right. Yeah. I think sometimes too, when we're in the presence of someone who's grieving, we're uncomfortable because we want to do something to help them. And so our uncomfortableness comes through, generally, it sometimes comes over as like filling the silence. We want to fill this void. And generally speaking, humans, we fill it with uncomfortable, awkward things. So, so my advice, is just kind of like, again, find ways to be with that person without those uncomfortable spaces. Don't expect anything from them, and don't, know that they don't have to explain anything to you. You're not going to fix them, as April said. It's just a matter of like showing up, being there, dropping food off and leaving. Like, you don't have to hang out and spend a lot of time with someone to let them know that, like, hey, I'm here for you, and I'm just going to bring you a meal, and we're not going to talk about anything.
Yeah. Also, I can just say I have no idea how you're handling this, or I can't imagine what you're going through right now. Yeah, honestly, neither can we. Yeah. So this is a new experience for us too. So just be mindful of, and like you said, I think that we do try and fill that awkward space with just words, and it's okay to take a breath and let feelings be feelings. And there are times where we can just be hanging out and we're going to burst into tears because something on the TV or a smell or a sound or something is going to remind us of the loved one that we've lost, and that's okay. And again, like, just being there and just being present and letting us feel what we need to feel in that moment, that's okay.
So with Thanksgiving that's here now, we've really, centered on the loss side of things. How do you, with the feelings of loss, at the same time embrace thankfulness or gratitude? How has that worked for you? anything that you could help another person with that way?
For me, especially even in the first year, now it's carried over year after years. I find that being around children is a really great way to just be joyful, because even if they are aware of loss, it's in this very sweet, innocent, simple way that just kind of, and they have this way of just being happy and joyful, generally speaking. And so it's a nice distraction. It's a positive distraction. But I also think that if you're in relationship with God, or at least trying to draw near God, even if you don't have that right now, I feel like God has a way of showing up in places that make it very clear that you're not alone, that you're loved, that you're held. And those moments are great moments to feel gratitude for that love and that care.
I definitely think God showing up in just like little signs. Cardinals, or something will happen, and all of a sudden, you'll think, oh man, I really wish that they were here right now. And a cardinal will fly like right in front of my car, or I'll be like walking my dog and I'll hear a cardinal singing, and I'm like, all right, God, I see you. I see what you're doing there. So just noticing and, accepting the signs that your loved ones are always watching over you. And yeah.
And I would just say being present with your family, especially around Thanksgiving or the holidays, because you might not get that chance to do that. And so it was our dad's favorite holiday, and so just being able to talk about him and the things that he would do, and just being able to remember him, it makes you feel blessed. And just to also think of the blessings in your life. It's a hard thing to go through, but God shows up in other ways, like you guys had said, and he continuously blesses us. So it's just focusing on those.
I think too, for us, what worked for us is we have a crazy picture of our parents in these ridiculous turkey hats. So we just blew up this picture and framed it, and we just light a candle for Thanksgiving, and it's just like, mom and dad are here, and you get to talk, and it's a conversation piece, and you get to remember all the awesome and amazing, times, the memories that you had, and know that, that's going to carry you through the rest of your life.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, really, really cool. So before I ask you who's cooking for Thanksgiving, are you getting together, favorite memory, something that, again, you're just, really thankful for your dad and for your mom? And I'll just go right down the line.
There's so many memories, but I think my mom, just how she always, no matter who it was, would always say, God bless. Like, she could be in ICU with pneumonia, and the nurses would be coming in, and she's like, God bless you, so.
He's awesome.
Yeah, she was awesome. And then my dad, just his laugh, and him and I had this thing where we both would do movie quotes, and so he would say something and I would say the next line, and he'd always say, oh, April, you're the only person I can do that with. So when I see movies now, or when I say a quote, I think, oh, dad would know the next thing to say.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I would say for my mom, she loved being around you. Like, whoever it was, it didn't matter what you were doing. You could be sitting watching a movie, or like going to the grocery store. She would just be so excited to be getting out of the house and spending time with you. And so that just made you feel so loved, that she cherished every moment with us. And then with my dad, I would definitely say just his deep conversations and like his wisdom with everything. Like, he knew everything and anything, and just being able to have him like pull that card out of his hat and tell you certain things, like, you miss those parts about it.
Yeah. Our dad was obsessed with history, and historical markers were his thing. So like, anytime you're in the car, if you had like an extra 5 minutes and he saw a new historical marker, you were pulling over to read about it. And so it was always kind of one of those fun things that we would do together. And my mom was, as my sisters have said, she was just full of joy and love, but she had this real innocence about her too, that was just, it ended up bringing out these really funny scenarios where it was like having a 4-year-old adult around all the time. And so I don't know, just things that would come up with that. Through my nonprofit, we had a celebrity endorser there for a while, and for a really long time, she'd ask me like when Oprah was coming over, So it's like you think about stuff like that, and you're like, yeah, Mom, she'll be right here.
Well, thank you so much for, again, your willingness to, help us as we're, in different levels dealing with this loss that we kind of feel that we're in, and realizing that there can be hope, there can be a sense of gratitude even with that as well. And if that's something that you're going through, we certainly want you to know that you are not alone. And I'd like to pray just a prayer of Thanksgiving blessing for each and every one of us that feel like, yeah, I've really lost something this year, or some that are going through situations that could be, as painful as what we've been listening to today. So let me pray this over us. We thank you, God, that you are truly the God of comfort, and that you will help us with our struggles, our frustrations, the depression, the anger, the doubt that can just be tearing at us right now. And we're wondering, are we ever going to be able to get through this? And we look to you to be able to help us to know that there really is hope and there is help. And Jesus, you are at the very center of that. Thank you for that. Thank you again for your working in our lives. We pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen. I want you to know, too, that if there's something that we can pray with you about right now, there may be a deep sense of loss or just a sense of loss that you're going through, that if you would text us the words "pray now" to 75787, that's 75787, we've got somebody that will be able to pray with you. And we really want you to know that, again, with what we're going through, you don't have to go through that alone. We hope to be able to, as well, welcome you out this weekend or very soon for worship with us, whether it's online or in person. And until then, God bless and very happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Thanks again.